Hi folks, wanted to give you a quick overview of what we did during our LD time on Friday. You are welcome to go ahead and take a look through all the pre-work, the follow-up, and the PowerPoint slides, which have all of the activities that we went through. Highly recommend that you walk yourself through some of those activities so that you're ready to go for our time together on 10/23, because as we talked about before, we're just sort of peeling back the onion and adding ever more layers to the pie. So please do take a look through that and sync up with someone, manager, colleague, to make sure that you're ready to go on 10/23. Just to give you a sense of the big chunks of what we did, we spent the first portion of our time circling back around the work that we did last time around our story. So we had a chance to check in with our partner and talk a little bit more about, gosh, what did we observe about how we made meaning of situations, particularly under stress, and what were some of the stories that we started telling ourselves? Were those different as a result of an increased level of awareness that we have about who we are and how we're showing up in the world? Do we see those things being influenced by status quo stories? So an opportunity to kind of check in with our partner. And then we peeled back the next layer and we started talking about worthiness, which you did some pre-work around gathering messages out in the community that you sort of saw being sent, either affirming or disaffirming, to various members of our community about their relative worth and value as human beings. So we actually started by creating those ecosystems. We did some reflection around, gosh, if I were a student that I cared about, growing up in that ecosystem of messages, what might I be tempted to think about my capability, about who I am, about who I'm intended to be in the world? And then we swapped out that student for ourselves, and we started thinking about what were some of the points of connection and potentially divergence between our experience and the potential experience of that student that we imagined in the middle. And then we stepped all the way back and we said, okay, great, what role might this idea of worthiness play in equity work, and what might be some of the implications that affirming or disaffirming messages about inherent worthiness that kind of exist in the ecosystem out there, what implications might those have for our development as leaders for equity? So we really placed this idea of worthiness in the broader context as well as the personal context. And then we started talking about how, when we're talking about powerlessness, right? Like the internalization of disempowering messages, that's actually an act of collusion. So on one hand, disaffirming messages have to exist in the environment for us to internalize them, but then also we have to make a choice to buy into those stories. And the reality is that when we're younger, we oftentimes don't have the mental, intellectual, emotional capacity to be able to distinguish between the messages that are out there and the choice that we have to take them on or to reject them. And yet as we grow older, we have more ability to actually operate with consciousness and to be able to look at those messages that we're seeing in the ecosystem about our worth and value, about the worth and value of other people, and actually say, am I going to buy into that, or am I going to reject that or choose to tell a different narrative? And actually, when we make the choice to tell an empowering narrative about our worth and value and about the worth and value of other people, that can lead us to take different actions than when we allow ourselves to sort of be socialized unconsciously by the messages out there. And so we started thinking about, okay, well, on a disempowering end of the spectrum, what are some of the messages that we might tell ourselves about who we are and what we're capable of, and how might that actually impact our leadership on a day-to-day basis? So from there, we started talking about gremlins. I know that that's a term that gets thrown around a lot on our team because various different members of our team have done work around their gremlin, which is basically some of the disempowering stories that we tell ourselves about our capacity and our capability and our worth and our value. They're basically stories of personal shame. So that term has been thrown around a lot. Everybody got the opportunity to engage around gremlins this time around. And so basically, we did a little 101 on what are gremlins. We spent some time identifying our gremlins. All of these activities you can walk yourself through in the PowerPoint. And then we had an opportunity to sort of partner coach each other to come up with a gremlin profile. So part of the power of gremlins or stories of shame about our worth and value is that we oftentimes kind of keep them hidden. We don't like to show them to people because who wants to show, to the world the places where we feel like we're not good enough. And so actually one of the real powerful things that we can do to release some of that shame, to release some of those gremlins, is actually to bring them into light. And so we spent some time creating profiles, stories about our gremlins. Where did they come from? What do they look like? What triggers them? What brings them out? How do they act? What do they sound like? So that we can actually start that externalization process. And you can learn more about that in our strategies document as well as in the PowerPoint. So we did some coaching around that, and then we had an opportunity to sort of share our gremlins with the whole team, and we put on name tags, and we wrote our gremlin on those name tags. We went around and we introduced ourselves, and then we debriefed the experience. What was it like to actually see the things that people think they're not good enough, that they feel that they're not good enough for, on our team, and a lot of really powerful reflections came out around, wow, sometimes the story that I tell myself about my own worthiness is not necessarily the same narrative that other people around me have, and so what do I do? How do I think about that relationship between the voice in my head and what is actually projected to the external world? And then we made some commitments about what we wanted to think about and monitor ongoing, knowing that we'll circle back up again at our 1023 meeting, check in about gremlins as well. So that's the quick and dirty overview of L&D time. If you have questions, reach out to your manager, reach out to a colleague, reach out to me. Otherwise, we'll see you on 1023. Have a good one. Bye.